welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Wednesday, November 17th. I'm your host for today's program, Paul DeMain. Many of the stories read here can also be found at our website at IndianCountryNews.com. So here are the news stories for the day from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. The sound on a police car video shows that a Seattle officer fired fatal shots 4 seconds after ordering a man to drop a knife. The Seattle Times reports the audio and pictures taken from the video are among court documents filed in relationship to the August 30th shooting of John T. Willaims, the 50-year-old Native American woodcarver who was intoxicated when he was spotted and stopped by Officer Ian Burke. The paper reported the documents were filed this week by Tim Ford, a lawyer representing the Willaims family in an upcoming inquest. The officer who shot Willaims has been suspended pending that inquest. The longtime advisor to the Arizona State University president on American Indian issues is resigning. Peterson Zah returned to his alma mater in 1995, a year after he left office as president of the Navajo Nation. He says while work remains to further improve the graduation rates of American Indian students, it's time to focus on serving the Navajo people. Zah says many Navajos are frustrated over the state of affairs of the tribal government. The incoming tribal president, vice president, and nearly half of the lawmakers are facing criminal charges in an investigation into the use of slush funds. Zah says he and others plan to form a nonprofit group that will find ways to restore respect, dignity, and harmony among the Navajo Nation. It's slots versus pot as one city in San Francisco Bay Area considers the fate of a major strip of waterfront property. The tribe's proposed casino at Point Molate in Richmond, California was rejected by voters earlier this month, though the measure was only advisory. A large-scale marijuana farm was the only other economically viable option for the site, according to a study funded by casino developers and reported by the Contra Costa Times. Environmental consultants evaluated 28 different proposed uses for the land submitted by the public. They determined that only a medical marijuana growing facility would generate enough revenue to pay market price for the 422-acre property. Opponents of the project claim the report is slanted to make the casino look better by comparison. The Godeville Band of Poma has proposed a Las Vegas-style casino with a 1,100-room hotel, nightclubs, restaurants, a ferry terminal, and housing for the site. After years of discussion, the Confederated tribes of the Colville Reservation have reached an agreement with a federal agency and a utility to build a new fish hatchery in north central Washington. The hatchery is part of a 2008 agreement under which federal agencies and tribes pledged to work together toward salmon recovery by upgrading fish passages over federal dams, restoring habitat, and utilizing hatcheries. The estimated $43 million Chief Joseph Hatchery will focus on supporting the recovery of the Columbia River Spring Chinook salmon. And today we talk with Ron Leith, a plaintiff in a breach of trust lawsuit against the United States that goes back to the 1860s, and how the U.S. government rewarded those Dakotas they determined to have stayed neutral or loyal to the United States during the Dakota uprising in Minnesota that led to the deportation west of the majority of the Minnesota Dakota people. We experienced a little bit of an audio dropout in this interview, but only a few words are missing from the discussion.
Ron Leith, we'd like to talk to you a little bit about a case that's called Sheldon Peters Wolfchild versus the United States. For most people out in the public, they know that case has to do with what I'm familiar with as the Loyal Dakota. That case has been in the court for some time now. Can you give us a little bit of an update about what that case is? My understanding is it's a breach of trust suit against the United States. Explain a little bit, and where that case is now in the judicial system.
Sure. Well, the case originated about 8 years ago. And the question that was brought to the Court of Federal Claims was whether or not the lineal descendants were a part of the original beneficiaries list that stems from the censuses taken in the late 1800s. There were censuses taken of the Dakota living in Minnesota, and from that census, the United States Congress issued appropriations that was used to purchase land in what is now Lower Sioux, Shakopee, and Prairie Island. Well, the lineal descendants are now scattered throughout the United States. Some of them, of course, live in the communities, but a lot of them have been disconnected, if you would, from the communities and from the original intention of the Appropriations Act that was put down by Congress.
Ron, wasn't that even part of the conditions that they become unaffiliated with, quote, the tribe in order to be recognized as a loyal Dakota?
Well, the loyalty comes first. And loyalty basically is from the 1862 conflict. When the conflict took place, there were many Dakotas on both sides of the conflict. One of the reasons for that was because many of the families that were in the Upper Sioux, Lower Sioux area were families who had married into the white communities and white families that had married into the Dakota families. So there were relatives on both sides of that conflict. And because of that, a lot of Dakota chose to protect and defend their families or individuals that they were related to by blood, rather than allow those citizens or those community members to be affected by the outcome of the war. As you probably know, there were more than 500 casualties of the war, and
right.
the Dakota were trying to prohibit some of their own family members from becoming casualties.
What year was that suit filed, and what is the status of that lawsuit as of today?
The suit was filed in 2001, and the last hearing in the Court of Federal Claims was on the 22nd of October. Now, the judge, Judge Leto, Leettow, Judge Leto has been very diligently working as the lead judge for the Wolf Child case. During the last hearing, it seemed as though the judge was frustrated with the Department of Justice's inability to move its position forward to explain their argument in such a way that they were sustainable, in his opinion. So the last hearing kind of came to a quick end without Judge Leettow really saying anything. But the transcripts, which should be coming out soon, tend to inflect that either one of two things is going to happen. Either the judge is going to issue a default judgment of his own, which we feel as though will be in favor of the plaintiff, the Wolf Child plaintiff, or the judge may require that the Department of Justice issue some type of settlement decree where the parties come together and establish some sort of mid-ground agreement that everyone is happy with in order to bring the case to a conclusion. The judge has repeatedly stated that he is not interested in seeing an elongated timeline with regard to bringing the case to a suitable conclusion.
When the lawsuit was filed, what were the descendants of the Loyal Dakota looking for? A reinstatement of that the trust fund that benefits them? What do you feel the remedy is, or what are people saying? What is the remedy? Is it just money? Is it recognition of that trust responsibility, or what is the final potential of this case?
Well, the original decision that was issued by Lapal stated that the lineal descendants are in fact who they say they are. Now that's an important point because in order to get to any kind of solution with regard to beneficial rights, land rights, inheritance, if you would, the determination needed to be made with regard to the identity of the lineal descendants.
Okay.
And that's already been established.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to leave it at that, but that establishes standing in the lawsuit, doesn't it? It means they have a right to seek a remedy.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And one of the things that has been always at the forefront of this is the third-party relationship, if you would, with Shakopee, Prairie Island, and Lower Sioux. And those communities, maybe a year or so ago, had the misconception that because of the fact that the Supreme Court bounced the case back to the Court of Federal Claims, that the case was in fact dead in the water.
Okay.
And it was a little premature on their part. What has happened since is that Judge Littell has been able to bring the case back into his court, request information with regard to United States Code, statutory use restriction, resolve the question of whether or not there was a trust, resolve the question of whether or not that trust was nullified by the 1980 Act, and who in fact was responsible for the disenfranchisement, if you would, of the original lineal descendants,
Okay.
for which now there are.
What's the number there? And then we'll have to leave it at that for today, and we'll get back to you more questions. How many descendants estimated?
10,000.
Okay. Ron, we got to go for today, but thanks for joining us on the Native News Update. We're going to come back with some more questions and dwell into the history of that case a little bit the next time we talk.
Thank you so much, Paul. Glad to have been of service. Have a great day.
You too.
And that is the latest roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. Miigwech for joining in. Come back again soon.